All right. Welcome back to BS Free MD. We have an amazing show for you. We have Dr. Keith Ablow back again. We're going to catch up on what he's doing. He's been writing some amazing Substacks that May and I have been devouring. It's been amazing. But first, let's remind you a little bit of who he is, like what Sean Ryan always does. Everyone gets an introduction. Dr. Keith Ablow is a New York Times bestselling author of 16 books and former columnist of the Washington Post and New York Post. As a psychiatrist for 25 years and now as a life/executive coach and consultant, he has optimized the potential of individuals and organizations across America and around the world. His clients have included well-known entrepreneurs, Fortune 500 CEOs, professional athletes, elected officials, and members of the President's Cabinet. Dr. Ablow has appeared on national television over 1,000 times and has been profiled in a vast array of publications. Welcome to BS Free MD, Dr. Ablow.
There again.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's good to be with you again.
Excellent.
Yes, good to see you as well.
That's great. So, I was, May and I were thinking, how can we violate HIPAA when we talk to Dr. Ablow again? And it's like, of all of those famous people
right?
that you've, counseled and treated, who is the craziest? Why don't we just start with that?
Who was the craziest? Having treated people who I've testified about in court, if you go to the sort of cross-dressing Harvard dermatologist who killed his wife, that might be one of them. In the annals of my case files, there are some pretty amazing stories. What's interesting, though, is that none of those stories are unfathomable. All of the stories, when you start to dig deep, you can see the likely next chapters coming down the tracks based on the earlier ones. So it doesn't seem to me that anyone's born evil in the world. Things happen. People, for better or worse, seem to be doing their best. A lot of the time, their best may not be very good at times. But also, it's been just a pleasure to work with folks who are looking for their core selves more than ever as AI starts to empty us out into the machine, if you will. People are raising their hands saying, I got to do something to anchor myself. And that's what I love to do, is help people find that core narrative to say, now, this is who I am, right? And that wards off a lot of anxiety and low mood and lots of other things that can happen to you if you feel like you're lost, drifting, and unanchored, which is pretty easy to feel when everybody's now got to make the decision whether to use their minds or not. Like, because you could easily defer to an LLM like ChatGPT or Claude and say, well, am I just being a fool trying to put together reasoning and an argument and my ideas to present to others? Shouldn't I just cede that to a machine? It's faster. And it's hard sometimes to kind of force yourself to use your own skills. And this is just the leading edge of all of it. Imagine when it's 10x or 100x in 1 or 2 years in terms of its abilities. People may well say, I'm really just an operator of these LLMs. That's what I do. And then I send it out and everybody applauds. I see this, by the way, in companies now that I consult to. You get all these documents coming over the internet that are clearly like voluminous and generated by AI. Here are my ideas, someone will say, about the conference. Well, okay, there's 12 pages of single-spaced ideas perfectly categorized, and no one wants to digest that either, so they're throwing it in an AI system to say, what should I say about this? And sending it back. That kind of takes people out of the loop, and it's like GPS for your mind. Nobody has a sense of direction anymore because everyone uses GPS.
Right.
And if we do that with everything, well, then nobody's going to have a sense of many things.
Oh, that's a great analogy. I love that. And so I've talked a lot about some of the health stuff I've been going through. and some of the Facebook groups I really got involved in. And I said, I always learn a lot from my patients. So being in these Facebook groups has really been helping to open my eyes to see what's happening with people with these categories of things. Pick whatever, whether it's a hair, I need advice for my hair, or it's a cooking group.
Never
or...
happens to me.
Okay, bad, but even
cut it short and tan the top, just like you're doing.
Yeah.
So, for instance, just with, say, MCAS or long COVID, there's so many people, you're right, that type stuff into ChatGPT and then just cut and paste and regurgitate it back into even these Facebook groups. And so you're just scrolling through all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't even want to read this. It's not anybody's thoughtful opinion. It's just ChatGPT. And it's scary because I think of how much we do rely on our nav in the car, and like our kids who are in their late 20s don't even know how to read a paper map. So what's going to happen to the generation coming up, but even us using AI all the time to think?
Well, we're going to get flabby intellectually, interpersonally, academically. It does put creativity and decided sort of perspectives that really we would have on the chopping block. It's almost like, here's another metaphor. If someone said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to send someone to the gym for you. Don't worry about lifting weights anymore or working out. We've got that covered by this robot who goes to the gym and does it. You'd be like, well, this makes no sense to me. I'm going to gain weight and I'm going to not be toned because I'm not going. But when it's our minds, we don't object. It's like, oh, you mean the machine's going to do the work for me of reasoning and analyzing and distilling down to concrete ideas that are then sort of mine. The machine's going to do that. Yeah. Well, then you're going to get deconditioned intellectually. There's no way that doesn't happen. You're going to. But it's worse than that, because I even notice when you're drawn to use it, and you do, at least for me, there's like an aftertaste. There's a little bit of celebration, like, oh my God, that was really kind of cool. And now I get to send off this document or illustration. There's also a sort of sense of, I wasn't involved. I'm now the director of a thinking entity. Or it's, I'm providing cues, but that's all I do. And I'm out of the process. So I've been sidelined. And human beings, I guess, we have an Achilles heel. We're so fascinated by technology that it doesn't matter that it's going to do us in. We're just still fascinated. So we'll let it take our jobs. We'll let it take our minds and our sense of self, because I think we have a psychological Achilles heel where it's just so interesting to us and we think it's so amazing that nobody says, I can't go there. It's probably pretty healthy to say I can't go there about something technological. If you're a writer and you're selling pieces that you say you wrote, it's probably best to actually write it. It gives you more of a sense of self-satisfaction. But again, that's what's potentially at risk.
I always look at it as
satisfaction.
We've had that come in, and I said that's cheating in a way, where somebody puts it in and it, so there's some ideas, and then ChatGPT or pick your AI platform spits out the document. You didn't write that. Just as much as, I don't know, if I said I baked this cake and I really had Betty Crocker cake mix. Does that make sense? There's some elements to
That's
work.
Another good metaphor.
Right, it's some elements of work, but did you really make the cake? I mean, yeah.
Well, you really kind of didn't, but we're being encouraged to say, well, you kind of did, because you are the one who operated the machine, right? It's like, well, you won the race in the car. The car didn't win the race. You won it because you were turning the wheel and shifting. That at least involves you actually demonstrating
doing
some courage
something,
and reflexes and doing something. This you're doing a little less. And it makes us all a bit delusional, because what's delusional thing is having a fixed and false belief. If you think you wrote it, kinda. When you didn't, you're a little delusional. Number one, you're a tiny bit psychotic. And the other thing is you're a bit of a fibber to each other, right? We're all fibbing. And I noticed that what people do in order to take the edge off the fib, calling it a lie feels a little aggressive, but to take the edge off of the fib is that they will talk about how long it took them. This is a lie, by the way. It did not. But they'll say that, especially if a supervisor is in the Zoom call or something. They'll say, "Oh my God, yeah, no, I used AI, but it took me like 6 hours yesterday to prompt it the right way, and it kept giving me the wrong thing, and I had to no, it didn't." And no, you didn't. You might have done it for 20 minutes and wrestled with it, but you didn't do it for 6 hours, and you're feeling guilty because you want everyone to know that you really take your job seriously and they should keep paying you. And not everyone can do this, but the truth is a little different than that. And so, I think we'll find, what did we see at the White House? This is a good thing, right? We saw MMA. Why? Like, I'm always about the why. Why would there be an MMA contest other than friendship between Joe Rogan and Donald Trump? Why? Well, because the more that we're threatened with losing ourselves and our sense of being anchored in our bodies, the more you're going to see examples, displays of physicality, because people want ultimately the truth. And you can't fake it when you get in the octagon. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. It's pretty raw. I saw that there's now something called AMMA, armored MMA, where people carry 30-pound swords and they're wearing armor and they're smashing each other, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? Because we're being disembodied. I don't know what the word would be for desouled, but something, discouraged, certainly, by, I think, technology. And so you'll see the high touch parts of the world start to get more and more, I think, elevated as well, but they tend to be fairly guttural at that point. It's like, either tap out or I'll break your arm. How's that?
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
that's an antidote to ChatGPT in a way.
Right.
So is getting outside. Getting a dog's a good idea.
Yes.
A dog will immunize you against Claude. You could even name the dog Claude.
There you go.
You read my mind. It's interesting because it reminds me of what happened after World War I. So Mallory and his whole crew that climbed Everest. It's unknown whether they found Mallory, a couple decades ago, and they don't know if he was going up or coming down. And most of those guys on that expedition were all World War I vets. And so they went from this absolutely brutal, almost meaningless exercise of just watching people be killed on their side and the other side, to what can I do that's unbelievably meaningful and as real as possible? Well, let's climb the highest mountain in the world. So I read a book about it. It's fascinating because these guys were just absolutely driven to do this real endeavor. Yet when people would invariably die in the effort, Mallory would never go to any of the ceremonies or funerals because he'd seen too much death. So I think that there's an element in AI, and we've seen it even in medical practice with the AI scribes, where it can, if used properly, rehumanize us. Because I can connect better with the patient if I don't have a computer interface between me and the patient. But if the AI is doing the actual doctoring, well, then we have a different problem.
Well, then we have a different problem. We also have to account for the data, which seems to indicate in some tests, I may not have my fingers on the pulse of the actual data, but that if you test diagnostic acumen, doctor plus AI alone, you would think, I would have thought, well, I kind of like the idea of the doctor with AI. That's like discernment plus. Turns out the AI alone does better than the doctor with the AI, because the doctor messes it up, right? Because we second guess the AI, and the AI is getting to be pretty smart, and diagnostically is very adept. So how long will it be before you don't see the doctor for routine things? I know they're doing a couple tests to see if AI prescribes for routine ailments. How does it do? So you come in and you say, I have these respiratory symptoms and, a fever, and it prescribes an antibiotic. Some insurance company somewhere is going to love that data because it takes the cost down quite a lot if just the machine's working. It's like Star Trek.
I heard that they did a study somewhere in Florida recently at one of the universities, and it actually flunked badly just in whatever that realm because it started to make stuff up that wasn't true when it didn't know. Whereas at least I hope humans can say, well, I don't know, I'm going to go look it up instead of making it
does.
up.
It's done. ChatGPT has done better on any licensing exam than any physician that's ever lived. But it's an exam.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Is that right?
Yeah,
wow.
but an exam is kind of an algorithm. So you're using an algorithm being tested by an algorithm, right? It's not seeing a patient where they're not telling you the whole truth of why they're there, right? Like they come in and they say chest pain, so they get to the front of the line of the ER, and really what it is they're being abused by their spouse or something, right? I mean, that we all have experienced that. And I don't know how good the AI is at trying to, figure out all these nonverbal cues and
well,
that.
It can't sense emotion and all that. I mean,
well, I think there's a real spiritual element that, the de-souling is a big deal because when you think of, I was thinking of this, what is the most godlike thing that humans made in the image of God have been given? And I think it's creativity, because in the beginning, God created. So this idea that we can look at something and literally with our mouths and with our hands and with our minds create something essentially, eventually out of nothing is incredibly godlike. And when we give that to the machines, I mean, that's the Terminators from my perspective.
I think so. And it's not the same. It just passes for the same. I mean, I think empathy is another remarkable gift that's inexplicable. I don't care if you show it on a PET scan or you don't. The areas of the brain that light up when someone's feeling empathetic or being empathetic, it's still a miracle. The colors don't explain why you can heal someone by understanding them and helping them understand themselves. That's never going to be explained. It's immeasurable, and that's wonderful that it's immeasurable. But you're right. It challenges the basic foundations of what people value. So these nuances, the way that you look at someone, the things said and unsaid that register with you. And if you're trained to listen with a kind of third ear, you are also likely to stop and think, well, wait a second, this person hasn't mentioned her dad at all. Lots about the mother. We've spent, 41 minutes on her mom, and somehow I'm being led down a primrose path. The real issue isn't even the mother, and here she is 41 minutes in. It's who she's not talking about. That I don't think a machine is likely to reproduce, but they'll try. I think lab-grown gems, not to go too far afield, but that's an interesting question too, right? Because now diamonds, if you buy them from a lab, they're a lot cheaper. Is that the same? I've asked people, do you think it's the same? And so, like half the people will say, I think it's the same. Molecularly, it's the same. So of course it's the same. Well, yeah, except isn't it different if you find it and the earth made it and it has inclusions that aren't planned? Like it has, right, flaws that come from the natural process. Does that, and why are those more valuable? They're still more valuable. Why? Well, because human beings love a true story. We're not as much about, oh, we figured this out, right? So that's why a baseball, I mean, I'm probably going definitely too far afield, but literally far afield. If a baseball was hit by the guy who holds the record for home runs in, the major leagues, that baseball could be worth $1 million, the one that represents the home run that breaks the record. How could that be? It's leather and strength, cork.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
because we actually value narrative, but we're giving it away. We're like, no, don't worry about that. Whether you created it or you didn't, doesn't matter. Let the machine do that. Just relax. I don't want to relax. I'd like to be engaged and used. And otherwise, I think people could feel a real sense of panic. Like, well, I'm being sidelined.
Oh, I
I
think
feel
so
that
for
way
sure.
when I walk into CVS too. You know, you walk into CVS, it feels
So
like a
true.
funeral.
It
It feels like
does.
a funeral. Like, did a neutron bomb go off in here? Where are the people? There's
Yes.
like one person looking the other way at the cash registers. They're not looking at you because they don't know what to do because you don't need them.
That's
Right.
And
funny.
they're just
It's so
right.
true. You don't
And
know
then
because
these
he never goes in there, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
it's a really, like, I think I go there less because I'm like, it's such a downer. Like, you
Ye-
walk in and it's like, well, did something happen in my town and I don't know about it? Like, I'm not supposed to be out or something?
It's like the
'Cause
rapture
there are no
came. It's really
yeah, it's
weird.
weird.
Well, it's interesting because Elon texted about, or he tweeted about this a week or so ago about how his autistic son said, well, "Why do we go out to eat? It doesn't make sense. It's more expensive. The food isn't as good,
Oh,
and
jeez.
we have a commercial kitchen at home where we can make it better and faster, and then we can sit at home and play cards while we're eating." And Elon was just like, it just hit him. He goes, "Well, because we like to go out and eat with strangers," which is
It's
absolutely
a
true.
thing.
It's a thing. Like we love to go. Like May has been going to
Because his son does not cook.
yeah.
And his mother does,
Well,
and that's why.
I think his personal chef probably cooks, but that's
whatever.
a different story. But it's fascinating because it's like we've just been to a bunch of concerts because we finally live someplace where we can go to concerts that are half an hour away and not 2.5 hours. And it's like, why do you like that? Like there's something about this community, even of strangers. You know, you might bring 3 or 4 friends and you share this. Like if you had a private screening or of a concert and it was just you and your 5 friends, like how lame would that be?
Right. It would be pretty lame, I think. And so now I guess we're at the point where we don't think about these things or talk about them much. But I suppose for, say, children of ours who might be in their teens or early 20s, they probably are asking LLMs for advice that they might have asked us for in the past. So relationships in that way are also sort of on the chopping block. So you're asking, instead of asking someone who like loves you and would give both arms for you, these questions where there's incredible care that that other person, we hope, is exercising in thinking through your life with you. Instead, it's an anonymous data-driven engine. And if that feels like it cares about you, that's dangerous too, because it doesn't, and you don't care about it either, not really.
I don't
And
get
if we
that.
start,
I mean, is that really happening? Because that's frightening because it's a thing that has no emotion or life experience. So how can our the kids be or whoever, I mean, even maybe someone aren't be turning to that for
No,
that kind of advice?
I think you're
Is that what you're seeing?
I think you're missing.
they
the point.
are, yeah.
I think you're missing the point. So we have another show called Docktails with Cocktails where we trying to find ridiculous stories and mock them and whatnot, and occasionally have drinks with it. And we did a story about this woman who was a manager at McDonald's and licked a bunch of French fries and put them back in the bin and sold them to her ex lesbian lover. Okay.
Okay.
And videoed it all.
And then videotaped it and put it on social media. So
What
it
a
wasn't
strange thing.
what a strange
to
thing.
do.
But I said to May, I said, I think that people that have been brought up with social media and with technology exclusively, I don't think they think it's real unless it's online. I think that there's a part of giving the reality of your, like, it didn't really happen because I never posted that it happened. And I think that that's a thing. So for them,
It
I
is.
think if you have that mentality asking ChatGTP is way more rational than asking your best friend or your youth pastor or whoever it may be, because the machine is the reality.
Well, the machine is their best friend.
Yeah.
The machine is their best friend. Yes, unfortunately. And I think you're right that you see a lot of people taking their picture. This started with Facebook and MySpace before that. There's been a rush into the machine. What Marshall McLuhan said is a cold medium. He said television was responsible for war in the book Understanding Media, because people don't go quietly into that night. So the fact that television draws you in because you have to assemble the pixels into a picture, and you do that unconsciously, as opposed to film, you sit there, you're bathed by the whole image. You don't have to do anything in a theater. But when you're watching TV, your mind is actually doing work. And that makes people panicked. So they feel like they're being homogenized and essentially absorbed into the technology. And then they try to resist through things he would have argued like making war. So if we find ourselves descending into a lot of violence, it might be, well, that's our way of trying to reassure ourselves that we're human still, when that's a challenge right now, which is why I think it would be wise for people to immunize themselves against this pandemic, this technological pandemic. How do you immunize yourself? Get some therapy, get to know yourself. If you're somebody who's spiritual or religious, connect to a higher power than the machine. That's you, by the way. That connection is about you, really. Not, I sound like Jordan Peterson. Really,
How's that working out for you, Bucko? You got a life that's not worth a damn.
Yeah. Right. There you go.
You're gonna just sit on the beach and drink pina coladas for how long, until you have no liver?
Yeah.
That's so great. That is so great. So I think spirituality, psychotherapy, or coaching, whatever you want to call it, pets, getting outside, and experiencing like things that defy explanation, like love, that we're not gonna, it fools you into thinking maybe this is love, the computer. And lots of people are ordering up fake girlfriends and fake boyfriends via apps that are making a lot of money selling, synthesized partners who are happy. Well, they don't exist. There I go again. They don't exist, but they seem happy enough to engage with you whenever you'd like. And that's a problem too, because if you have millions of people with fake relationships where they're on tap and they answer right away and they're in their pockets, then if you delay in a real relationship, you delay, or you don't quite get it on the first try, or lots of things, or you have needs of your own, that may be a deal breaker, because we're getting used to synthesized animated partners who are always ready to talk and never self-focused unless it's programmed into them, which I suppose it could be at some point.
I'm just started thinking, where's the line between someone playing a game of that for a while versus true like DSM diagnosis of, if you really, it's like delusional. If you really think this, you're married to, I've heard people marrying their AI partner and all this stuff. That is delusions, right? Unless they openly say, yeah, I know this is just pretend, like I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons.
I've had people come to me. There are people getting very confused to the point of near psychosis. There's somebody I treated who had a mundane job. It's fine. Not doing well at it though. And trouble in relationships, but was like the number 5 competitor in the northeast region of the game War Tune, where you can buy wings and other things to sort of do competitions in warfare. And that really for him was a more compelling reality than the messed up job and the messed up relationships. There was always this but I'm the number 4 like warrior and war tune in the Northeast, and I just got my third set of wings. It's like, oh, okay, how much have you spent? 40,000 so far on the game. Big business, right? And sustaining, what is that? It's a drug. So
Well,
you
yeah.
might spend it on crack cocaine, and you might spend it on war tune.
Right.
Either one will transport you to an alternate reality of sorts, a different mood state, different sense of self. Things are fine, though my life is crumbling, really. Things are fine because, I'm a pretty formidable force in this alternate environment, where I get a lot of applause and rewards like animated shields. Crazy.
It's amazing. So you talked about therapy. I want to get back to that because I don't think all therapy is created equal, and I'm sure you would agree with that. One of our friends goes by the Truthful Therapist, and she's just been very outspoken. She was a social worker, worked as a guidance counselor, had a medical leave for about 3 years, came back, and all of a sudden, all the kids are trans. And she was like, "What in the world has infected these, kids in San Francisco?" Which is where she was working. And so she talks about how, they'd have suicide prevention week, and then they'd end up with more suicides. They'd have mental illness awareness week, and then they'd end up with more anxiety and depression. And so I think that there's an element in at least popular therapy where therapists will tell you what you want to hear. It's not your fault. It was your crappy family or your dad. It was never how you reacted to an abusive parent. It was always the abusive parent. And then it works great for the counselor because you can have 20 patients, none of them ever get better, and your practice is full. Versus I think what you're doing and what I've read of your work where, people are learning resilience and taking their own power back through their pain, which, that's hard work, but that's actually what we used to seek, which was, meaning and truth and these bigger ethereal concepts rather than, I just don't want to be anxious anymore.
Absolutely. And very often, really, it's not that common that when people come in, if you're really going to help them, you're rubber stamping their perceptions of what's going on. These things are usually hidden from view. That's why they cause things like depression or anxiety problems, because the person isn't possessed of the real story. And humans don't necessarily want to yield that. We bury things, we bury truths, especially painful ones. And we think, well, we can get by without unearthing them and looking at them clearly when you can't. And also we overstate what the risk might be of looking at things squarely because we remember so many of these things with the heart of a kid. So the idea that you may have questioned, well, was I loved in my family? Or that's just, one example, that you can look at as an adult and think through it and prevent yourself from selecting partner after partner who really isn't in your corner because you're reproducing what you grew up with. That's what happens. In order to do that, you better look at what you grew up with and say, oh my God, wow, yeah, I guess you'd have to say that wasn't very devoted, what that was shown me. Okay, nothing's perfect, but I don't have to reproduce that. And you can do that as an adult, but you need somebody to say, no, what you said about your brother, who you say is the best ever, doesn't square with what you told me happened in those years. I'm trying to understand, but I'm not getting it, right? Help me. That is the moment that I really, value, where with empathy and kindness, you're taking someone by the hand and saying, your version of these events feels forced or inaccurate, perhaps. I need to know more. It's like Columbo, that show, where the detective, for your younger listeners, they won't know what I'm talking about, but Columbo was this raincoat wearing Peter Falk, right? He'd always have one more question that he'd apologize for. But that was the question that got to the heart of the matter. That's what a good therapist will do. My own, when I went to my first psychiatrist, 80 years old, like 4'11", maybe 5 feet. He listened to me for like 5 minutes. This was my first time ever going to therapy. I was a chief resident in psychiatry. And he said, "Do you ever get the sense as you're speaking that you're completely full of crap?"
Yes.
And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, Keith, it's your life and it's your time and it's your money. And if you want to waste all three, I guess I could sit here with you." And of course, you're like, "No, I don't want to. I don't want to waste all three." And that's the beginning of things. But it took, a warrior to actually not just sit there and collect the money and be like,
Right.
whatever. This was pleasant. He's a nice enough guy. But that was his whole thing. And then when I was leaving his home in Newton, Mass, I said, "I hope you have a good weekend." And at this point, I was headed to the door. I said it matter of factly, and he looked at me and he said, "You and I don't know one enough. We don't know one another well enough for you to give a damn what kind of weekend I have." And then he was gone back into his office. But he had laid down the gauntlet. Like, let's not glad hand each other here. You don't care about me yet. Don't say you do, because we want complete brutal honesty here. So there you have it.
Wow. Maybe you did though. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I may have had a little bit of an attachment, but I think some of it was for the drama, for the effect.
No, of course.
But I think he had sort of refined this capacity to pierce the defenses of those who would like to escape without the truth. We don't want that in our lives. That's really, I'm of no use to anyone if they just want to fib, other than that I will tend to not let people. I have a sense of discomfort when they do. And I'm like, I still don't get it. I'm sorry. I'm just going to sit here. I still don't get it. Like, you have not told me something to satisfy me that this story makes sense. I want the story to make sense. Yours doesn't. And we can't sit with that.
That's it. I think that's, I don't know, man. I was going to say that's a gift. Plus, I mean, training too. I think of, but because not everybody has that ability.
Yeah, I look back to when I was in a big system and I was on credentials committee, and how many people were were psychologists that were really young and wanted to save the world, and they'd get in trouble because they had no boundaries. And that always just fascinated me. It's just like, are they trying to treat patients, or are they trying to treat themselves by, uncovering these truths in other people? Like it was always this kind of odd thing,
You never know, right? And I mean, I always felt that that is tremendously important, and maybe it comes with time. I think having someone as your therapist who's been through some things is good. And you might not know what those are, but if I had to pick, I'd pick somebody who, has suffered somewhat, because, in the broken places, you resonate better with people's fractures.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's an open question. You're absolutely right. Like, why are you doing this? And is it for you, or is it for the person? I think that is a very important question that every healer has to ask themselves. Of course, if you're a neurosurgeon and you're great at it, I don't really care what motivates you.
Exactly.
If I have a glioblastoma in my head and you have the wrong motivation, but you're technically, brilliant, let's have you do it. Right. But with other fields, psychiatry especially, you really do want somebody who's committed to reasoning through things with you. And often those are people who have deep questions about self and, are wrestling with issues themselves. It's okay.
Maybe that's why, even though, like we were talking about this today earlier, about how psychoanalysis, the whole birth of psychoanalysis, when you think of it, you go back to Freud, this cocaine-addled guy that was interviewing sexually repressed Viennese housewives of, upper income and whatnot, and you go, that's how we birthed psychiatry. But I think there's some
Ah,
unbelievable value in the fact that to be an analyst, you have to be analyzed. So you have to kind of be, it's likened into, every single drug and alcohol counselor I've ever met was a former addict, because they're the only people that can really relate to addicts or other addicts, right? It's like, no,
right.
no, I'm the cleaned up guy. You can have my life. I know what it's like. I mean, if you're the never drank Mormon guy, you're not going to be a very good drug and alcohol counselor, you know?
Right.
And so do they still, does anyone get trained now where they have to go through some kind of therapy or analysis or whatever before they get, finish their residency? Because I think that's just unbelievably powerful.
No, they don't. Not really. And in fact, for a listening profession, like psychiatry doesn't listen anymore, because psychiatrists can do a whole lot better financially if they just prescribe every 10 minutes, and leave the talking to either the social worker or the mental health counselor. Uh, and these motivations are completely transparent. If I were an insurance company and someone said, well, who do you want to do the talking? I would say, well, I think the mental health counselor, because they just have to finish college and that I can pay those people less. If you're the company, the insurance company,
Right.
I'm not going to pay a psychiatrist anything that will motivate the psychiatrist to spend an hour, because that's going to cost me more. And so psychiatry abandoned listening in favor of diagnostic classification and matching it with medicines, which is what the vast, vast, vast majority of psychiatrists now do. They come up with something in the DSM-5 TR, and they match it with one or more medicines, which must make big pharma applaud, and takes the likelihood of reasoning with someone and empathizing with someone as a mode of cure and brings it close to zero as an option, which, is sad, because it's, again, it's one of those miracles that doesn't go along with AI. AI can do the other stuff, but it can't do, you could have it listening in the background to a diagnostic conversation with a psychiatrist, come up with a diagnosis, match it with the likely meds, remind the psychiatrist, here are some blood tests to do to make sure it's not the person's thyroid and it's not this or that. That a computer could do. What the computer can't do is have that moment of epiphany where everything becomes perfectly clear and you say, I think I get it. I think I get it. And the fact that I get it, even though you've been through hell, Mr. Anderson, the fact that I get it, I hope that's some solace. And I hope now that you get it, and the fact that you do is going to help you out. And it might even relieve a bunch of your symptoms. I mean, I had someone come in here saying that there were listening devices in the walls years ago. Her parents had put listening devices in the walls. And then when I made her, had her tell me her story, I said, that would be so great. She's like, what? I said, if there were listening devices in the wall, it'd be simple. We open up the walls, we take them out, done. But your parents are so intrusive. They're like, they don't need listening devices in the walls. They have listening devices in you. You don't have an original thought anymore. Well, you have a lot of work to do, because that thing would be easy. We just open the drywall. You're telling yourself a story that's actually comforting, instead of saying, I got work to do on my relationships and myself.
Right, but
Yeah.
but if you look at the nakedly obvious pharma fest that the DSM in modern psychiatry has become, what's the solution to that problem? Here's Abilify or quetiapine and an antidepressant, and I'll see you for 10, in 2 weeks for another 10 minutes. And again, like I had one of my colleagues, back in the Northwest, he was a very honest psychiatrist, and we sat on a lot of different boards together. And I did a talk kind of about this, like calling, BS on how much of what we do is meaningless. And, we're hyper treating blood pressure in 85-year-olds. I don't even know what a normal blood pressure is in an 85-year-old because no one knows. And he said, you know what? You're right. I've seen the same 20 patients for 20 years, and they never get worse and they never get better. And I've had them on 15 different meds that, as the new meds come out, I put them on the new meds and nothing ever changes. And I was like, wow, someone who's actually honest. But again, like, what a great thing. Like, SSRIs from a business perspective are better than heroin because you don't die from it. They're almost impossible for a large portion of people to get off of.
Yes, hard.
And they kind of blunt your reality so that you maybe function a little bit better, but you never get to the heart of the matter. Like, what a perfect drug to sell from a sales perspective. Like, it's better than booze. At least you feel like that if you drink too much,
Right. The heart of the matter is a pretty good headline for where we need to go, to the heart of the matter. And I don't think that AI takes us there. That's not where I think it takes us. I think it takes us outside ourselves. So again, I think people need to immunize themselves and literally decide, here's my plan to not get completely absorbed by technology. I now have a plan. It's this pet, this walk in the morning, telling people, calling people on the phone. No one calls anymore. A friend of mine who's an older man in his 80s said, if you ever started out with texting and then you told people you're not going to believe this invention, you can actually use your texter to call and talk. People be like, you're kidding me. But
I know.
We went the other direction.
Right.
Because I think people are ambivalent about interacting with people. Hence, we tend to stream toward interacting with computers. And if you can get away with texting, people tend to. And then you don't have to answer the text necessarily because no one knows if you really got it yet. And then you can stop in the middle, which I've always found curious, even with a relative of mine or something, where you're texting and you just said something and then nothing happens for 20 minutes. But you presume the person just had to do something else because there's no etiquette yet or about this, like that you're supposed to say, hey, I gotta go. I'll text you later. Like, people tend not to do that. They just stop.
Yeah.
So
it's fascinating. I remember our son. It's really funny because when we had a landline, he'd never want to answer the phone.
Or the answering machine would come on. He wouldn't pick up the phone.
Dude, you're 2 steps away from the phone. Answer the phone. Well, I don't want to because I don't want to talk to anybody. And I'm like,
right.
Well, what do you? And then it's so funny because in his career now, he's in the military, and I'm like, what do you do? He goes, I call people on the phone and ask them to do stuff or order stuff for me. And so the kid that was absolutely scared of talking to anyone on the phone, that's his job. He goes,
that's his job now.
Yeah, he goes, it doesn't bug me anymore. And I'm like, exactly, because you learn how to do it. It's a valuable skill.
True. But it takes me back to when I was dating in high school and we had a rotary phone and I would be calling Gail, this young woman that I wanted to take to a movie. And I'd hold my finger on the last digit. Because when you let go, it puts the call through, right? The wheel spins and it puts the call through. But until you do, you're not connected. So we really have this fear sometimes of connecting with other people. And this fits nicely into that, the phone thing with the texting. You don't really have to connect. They can't see you. They don't know your facial expression, your emotion. You can have AI write the texts now.
Oh, it does. Okay, so which makes me think of the whole thing of what were your thoughts on people get on these fights on Facebook or Instagram where it's not real because you're not seeing them face to face, you're not having a verbal communication, it's just these texting fights where people are vicious and mean, and it would be something that they'd never say to somebody for the most part, person to person. Yet there's this oblivion when, you're using your phone or your computer, whatever device, and just typing it in there and putting it out to the world.
I think that it's like when you're driving and people get into road rage, it's partly because they think they're kind of invisible in the car. And it's not that they're not doing it to another person. It's another driver.
Interesting.
And so when you're doing it with Facebook or you're doing it through text and bullying someone or otherwise harming someone else or getting inflamed, it's very hard to say whether you think of that as a person, because they're coming to you through the same machine that brings you, videos that may or may not be real, that could be synthesized or generated by AI. The more that happens and that we interact with those computer generated versions of humans, the less likely it is that people will experience empathy for real humans, because it's hard to maintain the notion like, well, I should treat this person as a person when I treated something that looked like a person with utter disdain, and I can turn it off whenever I want. And now young people, I don't tend to do it, but a lot of people do listen to videos at 1.5x or 2x or 3x the speed.
Oh yeah, I do.
Okay, there you go. So then when someone talks at a normal rate, if that's your habit, you may be like, my God, will you get it out already? Like, where's the button I press to make you talk faster? You're boring me and you're taking too much of my time. I think
that's funny, because my brain, I think some of these people, I think, oh, they're really fast talkers, so they purposely slow the frame rate down so that most of us, like my brain, can digest it, because I'm like, otherwise it's just way too fast. But yeah, that's a good point.
So what would you, with all of your years of experience, all your years. Okay, you're a little bit older than me, about 3 or 4. What would you? Because I've said for a long time, the quality of your life is really the quality of your relationships. If you have a good spouse and a solid relationship there, and a decent relationship with your kids, and you have 4 or 5 like intimate friends that you can do stuff with, you're good. Odds are you have a pretty good life, regardless of how much money you make. And so, what would be the top 3 pieces of advice to like immunize yourself from the coming apocalypse and build high quality relationships so you can have a high quality life?
Great. Wow. Well, okay. Favor self-disclosure. Assume that you are going to be reluctant to share things that you think paint you in either a negative light or painful things you've lived through. Share them with people you care about. People bond around pain. They don't bond around their resumes. Right? So that's one thing I would say. 2, I would say be retro. Send an occasional handwritten note to people you love. Tell them that you were thinking about them and that you wanted to write it down and send it to them so they could have it. A text is not the same thing. And thirdly, I hope this isn't too much of a bummer, but keep in mind that one can't predict the future, that you may or may not have a long time with your dear friend or your partner in life or anyone. Because the real threats in life aren't really subway stabbings. They're things like mundane things like strokes, right? That's much more common, and you don't know when. And kind of keep that at the front of your mind, so that your life becomes more intense rather than less. And you actually say, man, I guess that's true. We're at that age and stage, and there isn't any age or stage that's immune to bad things happening. Keep it in mind. So that those 3 things perhaps could make your relationships even more genuine and treasured.
Oh, what is that? Was that the Marcus Aurelius, the Mure Morte or whatever it was, where basically every day you get up and you remind yourself you're going to die, so that it pushes you to live. I
Yes.
forget the exact Latin phrase, but it's. I mean, that was kind of the whole concept, and this idea of writing things down and giving them to people. So May and I, almost 3 years ago, we had 29 years in Oregon, accumulated all this stuff, had these literal chests, like what are they called?
Steamer trunk.
Steamer
I have
trunks.
antique steamer trunks.
Steamer trunks filled with stuff. I mean, I have my immunization record from 1965, and strangely, there's only 3 shots on it. Imagine that.
Oh, there you go. Imagine.
There you go. And I have newspaper clippings from when my favorite team won the Stanley Cup in 1989 and all this. And you look back at this and you go, this is absolutely amazing. And now it's all digital. The steamer trunk, you lose. I spent, it makes me almost cry thinking about this. I spent about 4 hours several years ago interviewing my parents when they were still alive. And I lost that hard drive. It's just gone. I mean, my dad telling me stuff about his history, I had no idea. I had no idea he started working at 5 years old, delivering goat's milk to babies that had milk allergies that couldn't have cow's milk. And,
I think I know where that hard drive is. That's in another trunk.
well,
Anyway.
if you can find it. But I mean, it's just like, I don't know where. I mean, I'd love to find this because I'd get it edited up and it would be amazing. I'd give it to my siblings. It's like, here it is. Here's the interview of our parents when they were still totally cogent and healthy, and explaining what their life was like, and what regrets they had, and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, to your point,
it's digital. I mean, in the old days, you would have just sat there and scribed it out, and you'd have had it on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I've found a stack of stuff that seriously I was like, these are love letters from old boyfriends that I kept. So I was like, okay, I don't even want to read these, toss. But cards from my grandparents who passed on years ago, and all the letters my mom hand wrote to me when I was in university and struggling, I did keep those. And I look back and I'm like, we've gotten away from that. I mean, I'm guilty. I don't handwrite notes to my children anymore. It's quick texts and things like that. So things that stand the test of time, I guess, are so important.
They are. And touch becomes very important. I mean, there's something still magical about, hugging. It's okay. If you're with your buddy and it's the end of dinner, it's okay. Hey, man, I love you. Right? Like, it's more important than ever because there's so much that is running in the opposite direction, literally running from each other. We're running from each other. And we could find ourselves easily very much alone, just with our machines.
True.
Yeah, but it's intentionality. When we moved, it was interesting because we live in a suburban area, so we don't have kids. Our kids are long grown and whatnot, and it's like you could just be completely disconnected from the world if you wanted to. You could live in a little neighborhood, never talk to your neighbors if you didn't want, never talk to the guy that mows your lawn or whatever it is. And you have to be intentional. And it's amazing because as soon as you kind of step out and you're putting yourself at risk, you are, because you're going to risk rejection every single time. But it's amazing. Like, you find this tribe, and it's just been so unbelievably rewarding because we still have our old friends and we still love them and we see them when we can. But now we have this whole new cadre of people that we get to
That's
get
nice.
to know. It's fun. And there are two places primarily. Church and a distillery. So there's tells you everything you need to know about us.
Church and a distillery. There you go. And I always put in my plug, which isn't really a plug, but for the fact that, if you have the leisure and a little bit of dough, it's still a very high art kind of thing to sit with someone and go through your whole life story with somebody who is trained like a sharpshooter. To find the demons and bring them in for display. And, there's nothing you need to run from. And you could easily run into technology or your phone. But the truth is, facing the truth is an art form, and it'll free you up.
Well, the truth will set you free. It might
the
make
truth
you
will set you free.
It might make you miserable first. might make you miserable first, but I mean, shouldn't some of this be a little bit like going to the gym? Like you're going to the emotional gym,
I
you
think
know?
that's a great metaphor. It's supposed to hurt a little bit, right? If you left the gym and said, I'm not going back, my muscles are sore. People will be like, no, that's supposed to happen. And the same thing in the mind gym. It's supposed to hurt a little bit because you're opening up parts of yourself and restoring them to you. But those parts were stored away underground for a reason. They were like the tougher things to think about, which is why they are gifts, and they'll give you power. Your pain will give you power if you look at it. If you run from it, you'll get weaker.
Interesting. I like that because, it makes me think about, you're right, both the physical analogy of going to the gym. Some people are great. They can look up the exercises. They're motivated. They do all the training. They know what to do. But other people have less sort of, as far as the mind goes, self-intuition. Now, Tim's very good at knowing his strengths and weaknesses, what trips him up. I think and myself, I'm different. It's like, well, I know things that bug me, but I'm like, I find it difficult sort of to figure out myself. Even as I get older, I get a little bit better. But I think some people who have the ability to really self-analyze and figure themselves out and go, yeah, this is where I really stumble and this is where I excel. But other people less so, just like the gym, for instance. And so working with somebody doesn't have to feel threatening. I think it can just help you unpack that and discover just like your spiritual gifts or your mental gifts and what the blocks are. And so that,
Yep.
I think people get all freaked out and afraid, like there's something wrong with me. Why would I go to a counselor if I don't feel like I have any issues?
Mm-hmm.
But there might be a
You
side
do.
to you. There might be a side to you that
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
Everybody has.
You know what I
stuff.
mean?
Like,
I mean,
come on.
your life might be going great, but there could be so much more that you haven't even tapped into, is my point.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
generally there is. And it's a nice thing to do. And it doesn't have to be threatening. And someone might notice something about you that's really sets you back in your seat. That's what you want. You want to be
Yeah.
sort of blown back in your chair where you're like, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
because I can tell you the most encouraging thing that anyone ever told me ever. And
What?
I was working I was working at a camp and in Manitoba, and I had become reasonably close to the director, and he's a great guy. And he sat down and we were completely alone, and he said, "I see you as a leader because people follow you. And I think it terrifies you and you do everything you can to run away from it." And then he gave me
Wow.
And then he gave me examples. So he started out with, here's this positive thing that you're scared shitless of.
Yeah.
And here's how I know it. So I couldn't run from that because he brought the receipts. And I thought that has pushed me. I mean, that was 45 years ago. And that has I still run from it. I still see places where people are, and I'm like, it scares me. And I'm like, okay, then I got to make a joke, or I got to, change the subject, or whatever the case may be. And it's like, well, what? You're really scared of being who you actually are? And the reality is, that's probably what most people are scared of.
Oh, for sure. And they'll spend a lifetime dodging and weaving around what they really are, which is a great loss for them and for everybody. Because if you're supposed to, in quotes, be something because your natural abilities lead you there, because others resonate with it, and you're suppressing it, that's a loss for you, but it's a loss for them too. And so, Van Gogh was supposed to paint. Wasn't very easy. I mean, it was a lot of pain for him, but we have the treasures from that journey.
Right.
He wasn't supposed to be apparently an attorney, as far as we know. So so in any case, yeah, I think that's very, very important, that you want to get to be the person you were meant to be from all time.
Yeah, that's it.
I love it.
We could speak to you for hours.
I know.
And maybe we are actually going to be transecting the northeastern United States in September. So
Please
so
stop by.
we could stop by. That would be
Yes,
just
That's right. I
awesome.
totally forgot about that.
Yeah, we're driving to
That would be
Montreal
great.
from South
Oh,
Florida.
well, then, yeah, you have to come here. We'll hang out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
That would be great. Where can people find you? Because this stuff is gold.
Find me at keithablow.com. And you can email info@keithablow.com. And we could even find your true self with any luck if we work together.
Outstanding. Thank you
Wonderful.
so much again.
It's
Please.
my pleasure. You guys are great.
Okay.
So
hang
good
out.
to see you again.
Yeah. When we push pause, hang out for a bit because there's some stuff we want to talk about as well. So again, thank you again, Dr. Ablow. This was just outstanding.
Thanks, Keith.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
But we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible. We can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.